Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to USA Global TV's United Kitchens. This is Ricki's Kitchen. I am Ricki Mckenna, and today I want to first of all wish everybody a sane and happy holiday season. I know that holidays can be a little crazy, so I just want to say, please breathe, take a sip of your coffee, and just relax so we can enjoy the show. I am a certified nutritionist. I've been a certified nutritionist for over 23 years. And in so being, I have created a lot of different things in the kitchen. This is my happy place. And I've also tried to make people understand that food is what makes a difference in your life. No matter where you are in the world, as we are on global TV, you have to eat. Most of us have to eat to keep things going. And so my philosophy has always been eat the best thing that you can afford, eat well, and eat right. And actually, that's why I named my book, Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right, and find the joy of cooking. And I have definitely found the joy of cooking. And if you take a look through this book, which is on Amazon, you'll find that you can interpret the recipes to your tastes. And that's the whole idea of the intuitive cooking that we do here at Ricki's Kitchen and in the United Kitchens. So yes, you can eat well and eat right and enjoy your food. And especially around this time of year when most of us tend to gain a little bit of weight. If you want to reach me and talk about it, I am, pardon me, you can reach me at Ricki's Kitchen, RICKISKITCHEN.net, where you find the menus for what we'll be doing for the next couple of weeks, especially toward Christmas. And actually, Dr. Jacqueline and I just talked about doing something a little bit extra, because for one of the weeks, I think it's the 23rd, right before Christmas, we're going to be making poached pears and red wine, which are not only yummy to eat, but they're really pretty to look at. And we might add a little recipe for brownies. So we'll have special treats for the holidays. And all I can say as far as the eating frenzy that people get into, because when you're invited to someone's home, of course, they serve food and you can't say no, but maybe you can. If you can, that's fine. If you don't want to eat something, or if you can't eat something, if it's something that won't work with your system, then please take good care of yourself by saying thank you, but that will not work for me right now, but this will. So you can also, make everybody happy that way, but keep yourself in good health. And again, that's rickiskitchen.net. So we'll get started with today's yummy goodie, and I have to show you the finished product first, which is our Spanakopita. And this is really, let me see if I can do this right. There we go. And you'll have to forgive the little delay here, but it does work. And here's a picture of the actual finished product. And each one, of course, comes out a little bit different, but this is our spinach pie. So with that, we will get started. And I'm a firm believer in fresh. This can be done with frozen spinach, if you choose to use frozen spinach. It calls for 3 packages of 10-ounce frozen spinach. But I happen to love fresh, so I've already chopped up most of one of these packages of spinach. It's a 16-ounce package, and we'll do the rest of it so I can show you how fine it gets chopped. Excuse me for 1 second. And the first thing I want to do is take my pie tin, baking pie, glass Pyrex dish, and I'm going to lubricate it with butter. I'm going to just put butter over the whole thing, including all the way up the sides, because as you can see from the finished pie, it does come all the way up the sides. Because when we put the phyllo dough in, it will wrap all the way up and around the whole dish. So make sure you get your buttering, your lubrication, and I definitely use butter. And I'm using salted butter this time. You can use unsalted butter if you prefer, but I'm using salted butter because that's what I prefer, and it seems to work well. Okay, so our dish is ready. This can also be done in a cast iron skillet as well. It's something that you can put completely in the oven, but we're going to use a traditional pie plate. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my phyllo dough and start rolling that out. And if you've never worked with phyllo dough, it is quite delicate. And my hint is it usually comes frozen and it tends to fall apart. So we're going to take the little pieces of dough and keep them here. And I have a cookie sheet. It's kind of a big one. And I'm going to lay them out on the cookie sheet because with this recipe, we do the individual sheets of phyllo dough one at a time that we butter. And then we're going to take all of them. We'll do 6 layers. And I'm going to start out here on my table. And we're going to take 6 layers very carefully. That's why you have to keep it moist because otherwise it will break off. So here we go. And I've melted a 1/4 pound of butter, which is, if you're doing the sticks of butter, it's 1 whole small stick of butter. And take my pastry brush and very carefully just put butter the whole thing so that once we get them together, they will stick together. So the butter does help them. And what I've found is on the cookie sheet, it tends to move around a little bit, but that's okay because we'll settle it down once we put one on top of it. And again, we're going to do 6 layers. So be really careful when you're spreading out the butter so that you don't rip the phyllo dough. That's a good friend of mine on the East Coast said, okay, yep, you're doing that. He said, watch out for the holes, keep it moist. So that's the program. So we'll take the next layer, and you can see it's big. The sheets, I think, are 18 by 20. I'm not sure. And once you set it down on top of the butter, it's there. So carefully set them down and spread the butter out. And if anybody has any questions or comments, now's the time while I'm spreading butter on all of these lovely sheets of phyllo dough. And let's see, you'll find the phyllo in the frozen department, usually, of your grocery stores. And so when you take it home, keep it refrigerated before you're going to use it, or keep it in the freezer. Let's see, next layer coming up. Whoops, it's kind of like handling silk if anybody's ever worked with silk material. There we go. It's kind of fun once you get used to it. It's almost like parchment paper if you've ever used that. And what I love about the phyllo dough is even if you're gluten-free, I haven't found gluten-free phyllo yet, but I'll keep an eye out for it so I can let you know. If you'd like to send that question into rickiskitchen.net. I'll be happy to address it and see what we can do about finding that, because I really don't want people who cannot eat gluten to miss out on this. It's such an absolutely marvelous dish. And so we'll have to find out if there actually is a gluten-free phyllo dough. I kind of have my doubts and I haven't checked it yet, as I say, and even if there isn't, we can figure something out. So we're on layer number 4, only 2 more to go. And I believe this packet had 18 sheets, and this is actually the 3rd one of these Spanakopita or spinach pies that I've made this week. So I feel like I'm becoming proficient in doing this. Here we go. All right, 2 more. Well, and when it gets too wet, by the way, it tends to stick. So be really careful. There we go. I can show you the parts that got too soggy. They look a little mushy. So we're just going to put them off to the side and continue with our melted butter. And if you haven't done something like this before with frozen spinach, and you'll see we even have to do it with the fresh spinach. Once you defrost the frozen spinach for the spinach pie, you take and you very carefully squeeze out as much of the moisture from the spinach as you can. Because of course, when it freezes, there's going to be little drops of water in between all of the spinach. There we go. All right. Beautiful. So I want you to make sure to squeeze it out, and I'll show you later exactly what happens even when you use fresh spinach, because we also use half a dozen eggs. So those are already sitting here ready to go, which we will mix up with some spices. And we do use about 3 cups of onions in here. So this is actually almost a meal in itself. There we go. We got a little bit of butter left over, which is perfect, because once we set this in and fill it, then we'll take the rest of the melted butter and put it on top, on the outside of the crust. Okay. We're going to get our pan ready for the onions, but first, into the dish with the phyllo dough. Now, when you pick it up, be really, really careful to slide your hands underneath and make sure that it does not stick to the pan. It usually doesn't. And I'm going to carefully wipe my hands so I don't lose it here. And we're going to take the phyllo dough from underneath and very carefully put it right in the middle so that the sides are kind of evenly spread out. And of course, since they're rectangular, it's going to be a little bit longer on one side. But what I want you to really do carefully is let it slip into the pie pan. And I'm going to push it down gently. I think you can see that. And there we go. Push it thoroughly down, but gently, and lift the sides up as you do it so that it falls into the pie pan. Now, if you like, you can trim the corners off, but I haven't done that before. And it comes out just beautifully because it gives you all that lovely flaky dough to fold over the top. So now that I've got grease all over my hands, we're going to give them a wash. There we go. And I'm going to set this aside, back on the cookie sheet actually. So there, our pie pan is ready. So we're going to take our onions next because they have to go into saute. And get my favorite knife out. And chop up. I'm using a little bit of red onion because I happen to like the flavor that the red onion provides. So we're going to cut up the red onion first and just dice it any way you like. This is a piece that was left over actually from yesterday's. So I'm just going to chop that up. And we'll come up with 3 cups of onion because we're using a 9-inch pie pan. And if you use a skillet, I've made it also in a 10-inch skillet, and it works beautifully as well. So if you have a 10-inch cast iron skillet, that's perfect. Anywhere from a 9 to, actually, you could use an 8-inch as well. But the 9 and 10-inch skillets work beautifully. So here's our red onion, which I'm going to put into my measuring cup to see how much we have. Okay. I survived it without crying. Woohoo! Just nicely diced in there. And now I'm going to take my other onion, which is a yellow one, peel it. I had another knife somewhere. There we go. Actually, I'm going to cut it in half and make it easier to chop since we're going to use this whole one. And let's take the skin. Ooh, this one's a little stronger. Ooh, yes. Okay. Well, you know what? We're just going to chop this one in half too because it's going to be easier to get the skin off. And there we go. And I'm going to plug in my wonderful little gadget that holds things so I can chop them without losing them and without chopping fingers. And in just a moment, I'm going to go wash my hands because they are full of onion and I can feel it. So I can sympathize with those of you who have gotten strong onions and get it in the eye. Waha! Okay. I don't know how Julia survived all of this, but it's pretty strong. Okay. There's half, and we'll head for the other half shortly. As soon as I see how much we've got here. It's amazing to me how much an onion grows in capacity and in volume once you start chopping it up. Even if you dice it small, as I'm doing here. Okay. Then we're going to mix the 2 onions together because that's the flavor that really... I happen to like the flavor of both the yellow or white onions, and mixed with the red onion, it gives it even more a depth of flavor onion-wise. Okay, so let's cut this one. Make it a little bit easier to peel. This was a nice, fresh, new onion. And if you don't have one of my favorite gadgets, you can also just use the peel that I'm doing right now and make it into a handle. Or you can just hang on to the onion this way. Excuse me, just 1 second. Oh, the onion really got me. Oh. Oh my goodness. Isn't running water wonderful? and soap. Oh, yes. Ah, better. Okay. Now to finish the rest of the onion, we've got some more to chop up here. And hopefully it will, since I'm chopping from the top to the root, supposedly that helps it not be quite as strong, because the strongest part of the juices and the aromas are from the root of the onion. So we're chopping from the top to the root, and the root's the last part, or next to the root is the last part to get added in. And sometimes it's pretty darn strong. Okay, there we go. We've got about 2 cups there now. And so the other half of that great big beautiful onion is about to go in, and we'll have about 3 cups of onions chopped. So this is the tedious part, and especially if you're using the frozen spinach, other than squeezing it out. Okay. Here we have. You think that's a lot of onions, but wait till you see the spinach. Okay, here we go. And of course, the spinach pie will serve anywhere from 6 to 8 to, I hope, 10 people, depending on how small it's cut. But one of the things I want to mention about this is it's very similar to a quiche in that you really can't overcook it unless you burn the crust by doing so in the oven. But the nice thing, there we go, 3 cups of onions. The nice thing about it is once you've cooked it, and when you keep it overnight, you can either keep it out or refrigerate it. Excuse me, one more time with the water. Now, as I was saying, you can either refrigerate it or keep it out overnight. I covered it with a plastic wrap, or you can put it on a cake pan, a cake plate. And I covered it with a little bit of plastic wrap. And then you can take it out and reheat it without fear of overcooking it. So it's a wonderful thing to use to make ahead of time before your company shows up. Excuse me. Okay. Oh dear. All right, we're going to put the onions up to cook now, so that a little bit of olive oil in the pan, about a tablespoon or 2. And in go my onions. Mix them up so we get the red and the white ones mixed together. And we don't want to really caramelize them. All we want to do is saute them on medium to high for about until they just start to clarify and just begin to brown. We don't want to brown them. So here we go. And that will get started. We'll hear it start to sizzle soon. And now for some more chopping. Since I've already got almost 16 ounces of spinach chopped in here, what we're going to do is chop the rest of it so you can see how I'm doing it. Handful by handful. All right. And excuse me one more time. That onion really got me. Oh, I'm so sorry. And before I start chopping, of course, I'm going to wash my hands again. That's one thing about being in the kitchen. You do get to have clean hands. Oh, right there. I hope that's the last time I have to do it. Now that we've got the onions in there. All right, so, and now to the spinach. Ta-da! Here I have a pile of spinach. This is probably about 3 ounces of spinach, and so I'm just going to start chopping. Make sure you keep your fingers out of the way, but just chop it up roughly a couple of times around, and you'll have it, because it does get mixed in with the onions, of course. So you want everything to just be able to cook beautifully. And what we're doing by chopping it this way, because I happen to like fresh, frozen is the next best. What we're doing is bringing out the oils and the moisture from the spinach. So, and we're going to add 6 eggs into the mix along with some feta. And here, as far as the feta goes, for those who are gluten-free and dairy-free, you can find dairy-free cheeses to use. So have a look for that. And what I'm using today is Bulgarian feta, because I found that even though this is typically a Greek dish, so you could use Greek feta, I find the flavor and the aroma of the Bulgarian feta as well as French feta are a little bit milder, and I really prefer that. So we're using Bulgarian feta. Okay, here's our spinach. You can see it's kind of chunky, and then it's also kind of small. So we'll just give it one more time through. Here we go. And add it to the bowl. It does take a while to do this. Probably took me 15 minutes to go through that whole great big 16-ounce package of spinach, but it's worth it. Okay, here we go. And now, since my onions have started to sizzle, we're going to take a look over there, and let's see what they're doing. As you can see, it's well worth it because it comes out so pretty. Here we go. And I do not, as I say, I do not want to brown them, but I do want to cook them, even though this bakes for about 1 hour. And as I said, you can't really overcook it, but the hour is well worth it to do it because it does make everything come together. Now I'm going to take my eggs here, and I have 6 large eggs, which we're going to, with very tough skins. Here we go. And I just found out something, a little tip that I'd like to pass along to you. I thought it was okay, and I had read somewhere, I think, years ago, that it was okay to put eggshells down a disposal. Well, let's get them out of the egg mixture first. After several years of doing just that, I had a little problem yesterday because the eggshells decided to stay in the drain tube, whatever it was, underneath the disposal. Everything else has gone through for 3 years, but somehow or other the eggshells managed to pack it together. So from now on, the eggshells go into the trash and not into the disposal. And again, this in the hand. And we'll whisk those up together. Check my onions. I'm going to turn the onions down a little bit to medium now. They're just getting to where they might start to brown, so I want to keep them cooking, but I don't want them burning. So I'm turning it down to low because my range gets pretty hot. Okay, whisk. Ta-da! Let's get the eggs together. We're going to add a little bit of salt, but not a lot, because people can always add salt if they like. Spinach, as do other leafy greens, contains a bunch of sodium. They're pretty salty. So instead of the what the recipe called for was actually, I think, a teaspoon and a half or 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. So we're just going to use 1. And of course, yes, you do need salt in baking because it just helps the process and brings out the flavors. So I have about 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And we'll have a teaspoon of black pepper. This is freshly ground, but it's in here. And if that sounds like a lot to you, it really isn't, because it goes through the whole thing. There's a lot of spinach in here. 16 ounces of spinach is a bunch. And it also calls for 2 teaspoons, I believe, of nutmeg. Yep. Wait a minute. Let's check it. Yeah. 2 teaspoons of nutmeg. So now you can use fresh nutmeg, or you can use dried, as I'm using, the ground nutmeg. We're coming to the bottom of the nutmeg jar here. All right. So we've added salt and pepper and nutmeg, and that's it. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of dishes that I do because I love garlic, and we all do love garlic. But this one does not call for it. If you wanted to add it, I'm sure that you could. However, I'm not going to. And so we're going to take this, mix up my eggs, beat my eggs up beautifully with the seasoning. Make sure that the seasoning gets all through and there's no lumps in there of the seasoning. And then I'm going to take my bowl. And we're going to add the onions, because they are done enough to put in the bowl. As I said, let's see, we can take a look at these. I want you to see that they're done, but they're not burnt. And it's easier for you to see, I think, here. Oops, there we go. You can see that they've just started to brown, to turn a little bit. So we're going to take those and carefully fold them into the spinach. About half of it at a time into my spinach mix. There we go. Make sure I get every bit of those little onions in here, because the spinach and the onions together just are absolutely divine tasting. And I'm going to put this back there, and let's mix these through. Really carefully mix through so you get everything in here mixed together, and you get the onions and everything, the spices, mixed through thoroughly and evenly so that your pie comes out. Make sure you get to the bottom when you're mixing so that you get everything mixed evenly and your pie comes out really, really delicious tasting. Okay. That's pretty good. You can see it's mixed. The onions are appearing. And it's easier to see the red onions than the white ones, but that's okay. That'll give you an indication of how evenly things are spread out. Now I'm going to take my egg mixture, give it one more little turn around, and carefully add that. A little, most of it's in there, but I'm going to mix it first and then add the rest of it. And of course your bowl will get hot. You can use glass, you can use stainless, whatever it is you decide to use. Here we go. And the rest of the egg mixture. Make sure I get all of those wonderful spices that are in there with the eggs. And now we're starting to get liquid. Okay. And of course the spinach is reducing as it gets wet and moisturized. And now we're going to add our Bulgarian feta, which I will cut into little bite-sized pieces before putting it in there. Just chop it up so that it gets in there. If you buy crumbled feta, that works just as well. So just to let you know, you don't have to buy the brick, but since this Bulgarian feta came in brick form, that's what I bought. And so I'm going to cut it up so that it will mix thoroughly in there. And now we have it crumbled. So if you can buy it already crumbled, that's perfect. There we go. My knife. Put that aside. And let's add the feta. Okay. And yep, it's gooey, but it's fun. And as I said, the feta, the Bulgarian feta as well as French feta is usually a bit sweeter than the Greek feta. So I and my family prefer using the sweeter feta. So, and since half my family's in France, it's easy for them to get the French feta. But you can always find it in the stores. If you can't find it, if you're not sure of the labels or it doesn't read and specify French feta, excuse me, ask the cheese person in the store because they should know. Oh my goodness, this is beginning to smell absolutely divine. And that nutmeg has a wonderful flavor and aroma. Parmesan cheese, freshly grated. And it's about half a cup that we're going to add to the mix. And mix that all in pretty well. And then we'll add our final ingredient and check our spices because you can taste it even though it has the raw eggs in it. You can give it a taste. It does smell wonderful. The aromas are fabulous. And as you can see, this one takes a little more prep than a lot of the other things that we do, but it is well worth it. Okay, our final goodie, pine nuts, pinola. Let's mix those in. Again, about half a cup. And this is something that helps to give it, obviously, the nutty flavor and the sweetness as well, because the pine nuts are fabulous. They're also extremely good for you. They help with inflammation as well as a number of other wonderful bodily advantages that pine nuts have and that they give you, besides wonderful tastes in your mouth, they do help with your body. So, and I'm a big proponent, as you probably have guessed, nutritionally, for food to absolutely address the needs of my body. And you know what? Tastes good. All right, we're mixed and ready to put it in the pie. So let's bring that over and I'll show you how to put that in. All righty. And as I said, we kept it moist. It's interesting because the dough does start to get a little bit hard. So I'm going to take, actually right now, I'm going to let this sit for a minute because I want to show you something. See if we've accumulated some water in the bottom. Not yet. So what I'm going to do is grab another spoon. and start spooning it into the pie crust. Hello. But what I'm going to do first, before I spoon it in, where's my measuring cup? Okay, there it is. I'm going to show you, I've got a slotted spoon and I'm going to start squeezing some of the liquid out of it. As you can see, it's going to come out. And we have spinach drops. And then I'm going to put it in. Because otherwise, it will take a little bit longer for it to cook, for it to bake. And so we want to take, I just want you to see how much liquid can come out. If you haven't already squeezed the frozen spinach out, this is the process you have to go through. It's messy, but it's fun. Okay. And you want to just pile that up in the middle and spread it out as evenly as you can get it. And by the way, just for fun, I'm going to tell you what you can do with all this leftover spinach juice. I actually experimented with it yesterday, and since I hate waste, I took the leftover spinach juice and I actually put it in the pan that we used for the onions, and it cooks up almost like scrambled eggs because there are 6 eggs in here. And so one of the things you can also add, which I have not added, you can have put some breadcrumbs in with this recipe as well, which will absorb some of the moisture. But since we're squeezing most of the moisture out, we're okay. We actually have plenty of room and plenty of baking that will absorb the moisture because you don't want it to be dry anyway. You want your spinach pie to be moist and absolutely delicious tasting. I don't know if you can see, let me get this out of the way. Here we go. I feel like a kid playing with mud pies, you know, only this is a spinach pie. And we get to use our hands. You can see how much moisture is coming out of this. And this is just from sitting there with the egg mixture and having everything mixed up so that we can put it in here. And you may find little lumps of the cheese, but that's okay because they will melt. They'll melt beautifully into the pie. If you have kids that want to help you with this, make sure they aim carefully or give them a bigger bowl to put the squeezings in, the drips. There's plenty in here, and I'm going to squeeze it till we get to the bottom of it because we're going to use all the filling in this. That's why I said this is a 9-inch pie plate, but you can use a 10-inch as well. And it just piles up a little bit higher. We're going to spread it out evenly and scrape it off my hand. Okay, we're just about at the bottom here. And of course, I've got nearly a cup of liquid that we're squeezing out. And as I said, just as a reminder, if you squeeze out your frozen spinach first, you probably won't have to go through this. And since I always use fresh spinach, this is what I do. And if you feel as though you've got too much for the pie filling, which really hard to do, the more filling, the more fun, then you can just, as I did with the other yesterday with the juice, take it and just saute it and enjoy scrambled eggs with spinach. It's almost like a spinach omelet. Here we go. And by the way, if you let it sit in the bowl like this for a while, you will get most of the moisture will come out and be on the bottom of the bowl. So be careful with that. Here we go. And let's see what's in here. Just one more little half a spoonful. And squeeze it out. Yes, it's messy, but it sure tastes good. Okay. Now, right, and let's take this out of the way. Excuse me a second there. Okay, and now we fold our crust right on top. Actually, put the rest of the spinach in the middle. I think you can see it. Now, I might want to break off a little of it because I want the spinach to show in the middle. Or you can cover it completely. It's your choice. I'm going to just cut off a little bit of it and fold it over right to the edges and then press it down. Here we go. So we have the spinach peeking out from the middle of it. Before I pop it in the oven, I'm going to cover up one little spot here. This is the nice part about the dough. You can just wet it and stick it right back in there. And I will give my hand a wash because, as you can see, I've been well spinached. Okay, and now for the final part before we put it in the oven. We take our melted butter, and did I say the oven is at 375 Fahrenheit? Okay, and just cover the outside, all that wonderful phyllo that we folded over. Cover it with butter. And it also helps to glue to the little pieces that we put in there. And so we pop it in the oven. And you don't have to worry about it overflowing like some other pies. And set my timer for 1 hour. And when it comes out, it looks just like this. So here we have our spinach pie, Spanakopita, beautifully finished and ready to eat. And we will enjoy lunch. And then, as I said, if you're like me and you want to experiment, you could probably add another egg to this, all this wonderful juice. We've got a cup of the spinach juice with the spinach and eggs and all the seasonings and everything, and just pop that into a pan and you can have a spinach omelet. So with that, hearty appetite, everybody. Thank you for being here with us at USA Global TV and Ricki's Kitchen. And Dr. Jacqueline, I hope you enjoy this, and we will see you next time, next Friday at 12 noon Central Time, and we'll be making some other goodies next week. So thank you again for joining us. It is USA Global TV and the United Kitchens, and this is Ricki's Kitchen. Hearty appetite, everybody, and have a great weekend. Thank you.